Does it sometimes feel like you're trying to learn new maneuvers, where you're learning the right technique, the right foot placement, but time and time again, things just don't seem to be working out and it's difficult to make any meaningful surfing progress? This week, we're continuing into part 2 of the 3-part series of learning the soft skills of surfing, diving deep into reading the wave. This is a barrier that we must first know about and then understand the different elements that go into reading waves. After which, you'll be able to approach any maneuver and wave with an improved holistic understanding, so you can actually start seeing some improvement in your turns, your nose rides, and just general wave riding, so you can see faster surfing progression for yourself. And if you are new here, my name's Considine, and I'm a longboard enthusiast, a professional longboarder, and a coach. And I'm here to share my learnings and experiences like these ones today with you all. So if you do find the video valuable, if you find it useful, then please feel free to subscribe. And if you know of anyone else who might find it useful as well, then feel free to share it with them, of course. But let's get straight into the edit. So when we're told that we need to read the wave correctly, a lot of the time we might be a little bit ambiguous as to what this means and what we've actually got to be doing here. But there's a few good key points that I like to be considering and that I like to talk people through. And understanding these gives us a lot better of an idea of how to assess the wave, and then our positioning on the wave and our surfing as a whole will improve as a result. So the first thing that I want to break down is the thirds of the wave. So say this is our wave here. This is our awesome little white water going on there. So in the thirds of the wave, we want to be considering what each section of the wave is really providing for us. And I'll run you through a few of the flaws that we usually see for people within that beginner to intermediate phase of their surfing. And getting on top of this can be a big, I guess, step across one of the biggest barriers for us in this stage. So we're breaking it down. I'll get out my red little marker here actually, so we can see this a little bit better. But if we try and divvy this wave up into its thirds, so we might have first, second, and third. So obviously that's the top, middle, and bottom third of the wave that we're talking about. Now, I like to think in the bottom of the wave, this is where we usually lose a lot of our speed, but this is actually where we see a lot of our surfing occurring in the beginner to intermediate stages. This is because coming from whitewater, we're pretty much at the bottom of the wave. And then also when we start to learn to utilize the wave face, we often have very long turns that are happening because we're unable to engage the rail quickly. And that just in and of itself leads to us taking a longer line with our takeoffs, with our turns, and means that we really end up in that bottom third. So one of the things that we need to be able to utilize here, one of the skills to be able to read the wave and to be able to surf the wave effectively, is going to be, of course, being a little bit more dynamic, quick, and reactive, and proactive as well with our turns. So the bottom third of the wave is where we lose a lot of speed. The top half of the wave, or that top first third or second third, is where we actually gain a lot of speed. And we can't go too wrong if we're continuously trying to get ourselves within this top half. Now, depending on how critical we are in the wave, it's pretty hard to be all the way up here when the wave is really critical, because obviously the wave face will have that curvature and that barreling nature. So it's going to be tricky. So the more close to the pocket we are, the more down the bottom it will be okay to be and to gain speed. But as we come, if I get rid of this, as we come out of that pocket or out of the critical position, we've got to make sure that we're trying at least to find our way towards the top of the wave, towards that top half, and that's where we're going to gain a lot of speed. And this is going to help us a lot for when we are trying to do different maneuvers like our nose rides, like our turns. It's going to be really helpful in that instance as well. So now that we've gone through that a little bit, in terms of other aspects of reading the wave, we'll just cover a few of the fundamentals and the basics here that may be able to help out. So essentially what we want to do is we want to recognize when the wave is starting to flatten out and when we might need to draw ourselves back into the pocket being that critical part of the wave. But we also have to have a real respect for what's happening down the line as well. So if we notice that the wave is actually petering off a little bit, so we can see that in what's happening down the line. So say this is us and we're on our little surfboard here. If we notice that we're going down the line and that wave is actually getting flatter, or again that almond shape that we spoke about last week, if that wave is actually tapering off, then what we want to do is we want to make sure that we're not going too far out onto the shoulder, because that's again where we lose our speed. We can think of down here, where the wave is tapering off, we're gonna have less speed and we're gonna have more speed the closer to the pocket that we are. And that speed is a really, really critical factor in keeping the wave maintaining stability and balance. That's something we often don't talk about, but also important as we start to learn maneuvers. It's gonna be really, really important. So what we ideally want to do is we want to find ourselves at the point where we're actually coming out onto the shoulder and utilizing some methods to make sure that we're pulling ourselves back to the pocket of the wave. Now, this is where some people come unstuck as well, and they might notice that they have to pull themselves back towards the critical part of the wave in some way, but they're not sure about how to do that. What we want to do for this is we want to use one of two things. It's essentially a cutback of some variation, but we can either do a little turn towards the beach, which is going to slow ourselves down and essentially wipe away any speed that we would have going across the wave. And then we can kind of sit around this area until the wave catches up, and then we can continue to turn down the line. The other thing that we can do in this instance though, instead of just carving towards the beach there, is we can do a full cut back towards the whitewater, and then once we are close to the whitewater, or if we even rebound off the whitewater, that's when we can continue down the line. So in terms of our understanding and reading of the wave, we've got to be able to list off a few of these important maneuvers. We've got to be able to recognize when the wave is tapering off and to actually implement either one of these turns to the beach or a little cutback to hold ourselves back into the pocket. And if we're unable to do that and we notice that we do lose the waves, or we fall off the shoulder of the wave, or we're not making the most of surfing to our targets on the wave, these are the things that we need to be considering. Now, of course, the wave doesn't always taper off. There's closeouts as well, or we can notice that potentially down the line, the shape of the wave is starting to change a little bit there as well. So I'll redraw half of this here. If maybe I'll redraw this whole thing so that it makes a bit more sense for this context. So what we might notice is the wave is coming and actually tapering off a little bit, but then down the line it starts to wall up again. So say this is our wave here, and starts to taper off, and then further down the line we can see that that wave height actually increases again. Now this is where a lot of people come unstuck as well. There's one of two things that we can do in this scenario, and then a third different scenario that we need to be thinking about. So say we're approaching this section, we need to make sure that we can either do again a nice turn towards the beach to stop ourselves from crashing into that part of the wave. This is important. Or we can actually do an off the top or a re-entry off that top part of the lip that is closing out. And again, that's a nice advanced maneuver that we should be looking to achieve as well, rather than kind of just dismounting and throwing ourselves into the whitewater when we get there. The other thing, of course, we can do is we can pull off the wave, but I think it's really good to show some completion and to put that into practice with our surfing progression as well. So making sure that we're either doing it off the lip and learning that. Firstly though, probably going for that turn away from the pocket and just trying to then direct yourself so that you're surfing straight towards the beach and completing that wave. And the last point on this little topic of reading the wave that we want to talk about is actually what we're going to be doing if we notice that the wave is starting to taper off, and usually we would come back into a cutback to bring ourselves back into the pocket, but we can see down the line that we actually want to accelerate down the line because we've got this critical section coming through, and we might actually be able to work our way around that section. So instead of maybe it's breaking as or about to break as we reach it, and then we're even able to go low and go around that part of the wave. Again, the more critical a wave is, the lower that we want to be to accelerate through it, because if we're too high up here, then we're probably going to crash into the lip or crash into the whitewater. So again, instead of bringing ourselves back to the pocket and not looking forwards and looking ahead of what the wave is doing, we want to make sure we've got our eyes up, which is another really good, important point, to make sure we're always looking where we're going, not where we are. So if we're just looking where we are and we're thinking, okay, the wave's starting to flatten out, we might cut back and then the wave's going to close out. Whereas we have a missed opportunity there if our eyes are up to actually continue accelerating and kind of pushing through a slow part of the wave so that we end up meeting the wave when it gets nice and critical and trying to go around that section and potentially continuing the wave. Again, this is a big thing that I see for a lot of people where they get caught behind sections because they don't have the faith or the trust or the experience in being able to drive through the whitewater through a section that may open up to another wall or face of the wave. And this is a really important skill, especially if we're surfing a lot of beach breaks and things like that, which I know many of us are. So, so that's another good thing to consider there. So that is the reading the wave component, okay? Thanks so much for watching once again. I hope you found that useful and that you found that you're able to take some of this, what we've learnt today, into your own surfing to improve your ability to read the wave, but also execute maneuvers and approach the wave in general. Coming up next week, we're going to be delving into the part 3 of the soft skills of surfing. So really excited to get that one to you guys. And as well, as usual, if there's anything else that you would like to see on the channel, please feel free to comment that down below, and I'm happy to have a discussion around that and potentially bring one of those up for one of the coming videos. All right, we'll leave it there for today and we'll see you soon.